What is the ultimate state of consciousness discovered by the great Taoist sages? Find out now. Hi everybody, Jason here. In Taoism, the ultimate state of consciousness is thought of a little bit differently to Buddhism and Hinduism, even though that the process of the complete dissolution of the self is the same within all three traditions. We have to remember that Taoism also is about that process of dissolving the sense of ego and coming back to this kind of true self, we could say. But what does that mean in Taoism? Now, first we have to go back to the two original great teachers and great sages of Taoism, Lao-tzu and Zhuangzi. Now, what we find in the Tao Te Ching is we find this word Gen. Now, Gen means authentic, or a better translation probably is genuine. Now, Lao-tzu is constantly alluding to this genuineness or this authenticity that an individual has beneath the socialization and the conditioning that we've gone through. And to put that into context, Lao-tzu is kind of critiquing Confucianism in the Warring States period of China. So he's saying that all of this socialization that Confucius is imposing on everyone, where we have to sleep a certain way, where we have to bind women's feet, and we have to conduct ourselves at the dinner table a certain way, and so forth and so on, it doesn't end. But that's all conditioning and socialization, which actually builds this illusion of this separate sense of self, of identity. Now, Taoism is about pulling that apart, just like Buddhism and Hinduism, but they have their own particular way of understanding that. But we see in the Tao Te Ching, we see this word Gen, which Lao-tzu is talking about, this genuineness or this authenticity that we exhibit when we become completely free of the conditioning of the world, so to speak, right? So when we become free of our educational conditioning, our parental conditioning, not that they all don't play a part in your life, but the problem is when that begins to solidify this sense of self that you think you are, and then you start to believe that the world is out there and you're separate from it. And this is, a fundamental error within especially Taoism. Now, even though Lao-tzu mentioned Gen in the Tao Te Ching, Zhuangzi took it a step further and mentioned Gen Ren. Now, in the Zhuangzi text, he mentions Gen Ren. Gen Ren means genuine person or authentic person. And so this is what the Taoist sage actually embodies, this Gen Ren. The Taoist sage is a Gen Ren. So let's say that Lao-tzu and Zhuangzi were the two original Gen Rens of Taoism or Taoist thought. And you need to think about authenticity and genuineness in a completely different manner than probably what you're used to in modern culture. In modern culture, a lot of people think, oh, he's just being himself. He's an authentic individual. But then when you pull apart those pieces, you see, no, he was influenced, or she was influenced by this particular part of pop culture or this social system and so forth and so on, right? So Taoism peels all of these layers back. And we don't want to confuse this modern interpretation of authenticity with the Taoist Gen Ren. So actually, Zhuangzi would actually criticize a lot of the people in the modern day who think they're authentic and genuine. Oh, he's just expressing himself, or she's just expressing herself. He would actually criticize a lot of that because he would peel the layers back. And all of this kind of pop culture, this kind of cringy culture that's kind of crept into society, especially through social media, Zhuangzi would fall off his chair if he saw any of that, because that's all based on comparison. That's based on you measuring your life against someone else. And then we have the audacity to create something for ourselves and say we are original and authentic. Now, Zhuangzi would obviously scoff at this because they are not authentic or original or genuine in any way. They are still driven by socialization. Now, this is how far Taoism goes, right? It goes right down to the core of existence. So when you see a musician or you see someone out there expressing themselves on social media saying, I'm just expressing my authentic self and this and that, pause, observe, and see where they're coming from. Are they really expressing their authentic self or not? Because the authentic self, the Gen Ren, the genuineness that we have at the core of our existence, is not determined by our social conditioning, not by our educational conditioning or our parental conditioning. It was there before our birth. It's kind of the idea in Zen of the original face. What was your face before you were born, right? They talk about this in Zen. What was your original face before you were born? And that's kind of the Gen Ren. That's that kernel of truth we have within us that is untouched by reality. And Thomas Merton actually has a really beautiful way of explaining this. I mean, I could read parts of the Zhuangzi, but I really like Thomas Merton's interpretation in his book, The Way of Zhuangzi. Now, Thomas Merton, for those of you who don't know him, was a Trappist monk and amazing individual. He had a great love for Eastern knowledge, and especially the Zhuangzi. So there's no wonder that he actually had his own version of the Zhuangzi. He obviously says in The Way of Zhuangzi that it's not a translation per se. It's more of just a modern interpretation. But Thomas Merton gets into the heart of Zhuangzi's wisdom, which is what I really like. Now, I want to read to you just a very brief section about the so-called true man of Tao. Now, man and men in this passage is alluding to everyone. You don't have those sorts of terms in Chinese. So it's alluding to just the Taoist sage. It's alluding to the person who is a Gen Ren. So let me read this quickly to you. What is meant by a true man? The true men of old were not afraid when they stood alone in their views. No great exploits, no plans. If they failed, no sorrow, no self-congratulation in success. The true men of old knew no lust for life, no dread of death. Their entrance was without gladness, their exit yonder without resistance. Easy come, easy go. They did not forget where from, nor ask where to, nor drive grimly forward fighting their way through life. They took life as it came, gladly, took death as it came, without care, and went away yonder, yonder. They had no mind to fight Tao. They did not try by their own contriving to help Tao along. These are the ones we call true men. Minds free, thoughts gone, brows clear, faces serene. Were they cool? Only cool as autumn. Were they hot? No hotter than spring. All that came out of them came quiet, like the four seasons. This little book by Thomas Merton, The Way of Zhuangzi, is a beautiful book and I highly recommend it. So there you get kind of an idea of the Gen Ren, right? Like Merton's kind of reinterpreting sort of what Zhuangzi was saying. So again, no lust for life, no dread for death, easy come, easy go. Kind of like the wind, right? There's a term in Japanese, unsui. Unsui means to drift like a cloud and flow like water. And this encapsulates the whole idea of the enlightened mind, especially in Taoism and Zen Buddhism, where your mind is not stuck anywhere. You have a mind of no deliberation. So you're not caught up in your own opinions, your own beliefs, and your own conditioning in the end. And you are free to move through life without any resistance. And this is the idea of free and easy wandering in the Zhuangzi. That's a big part of the Zhuangzi text, the free and easy wandering aspect. What does that mean? Well, that means exactly what Thomas was talking about. It means the ability to move through life without getting stuck and without overly worrying about each and everything, right? Like we constantly are fighting for success in our life and we're constantly fearful of death, where the Taoist sage is completely free of all of that. Now, that means that they have dissociated with all of the socialization that they have gone through. That's how they are the Gen Ren. And that's a possibility for all of us. But that takes extreme effort, in some sense, to identify the conditioning that stains your pure awareness. And that's what the Taoist sage does. They essentially identify these unnatural tendencies that we have that are developed through socialization, and they weed those out. And this is done through the Taoist philosophical system, obviously. This is done by a deep understanding of Taoist philosophy, not just a new age or modern interpretation of Taoism. This is achieved through a deep understanding of Taoist philosophy, through understanding that if you're acting out of this certain unnatural self, then that's where all of the problems arise from. But if you begin to just come back and abide in that place, which is beneath all of the accumulation of this ego that you believe you are, then you begin to act genuinely. And that's actually how you react efficaciously with the world. That's what in some sense, what wu-wei is. When you begin to follow this process of non-doing and you stop reacting to all of the accumulation of opinions and beliefs you have in your mind, you start to fall into accord with this very effortless state of intelligent spontaneity, which is another aspect of wu-wei, right? Where you can act immediately and appropriately to each and every situation. You are genuine. You don't have any conditioning which is confusing your reactions with reality. That's one of the big problems, right? A lot of us, when we are reacting to reality, we are reacting from a conditioned perspective, which is inauthentic. Do you see? It's inauthentic. To act genuinely, you have to act from the core of your existence, the Gen. You have to become a Gen-ren, and you act immediately and appropriately and genuinely with a lot of humility and humor and so forth and so on. That might not be accepted in the modern day, but that's the way the world is. The way the world is the Gen-ren, which means that there's a lot of humor, and humility is not something that we frown upon, but something that we embrace in Taoism. And so that's essentially the path for all Taoists, and actually the path for all Buddhists and Hindus as well, is to come back into alignment with that very free and easy wandering where we can move through life efficaciously without getting stuck here and there by this indoctrination that we've all gone through. And so we have to identify those unnatural aspects of our mind and weed those out. And the way to weed those out is just stop reacting to them. This is where awareness is important in all spiritual practice. Your pure awareness has the ability to identify anything like that in your mind. And so when someone's doing something or they're trying to evoke a response from you, you have to sort of pause and think. If you're not a Taoist sage, you have to pause and think, how am I going to react to this? Because am I going to react out of my own personal conditioning, my own nationalistic or religious or what have you conditioning? Or am I going to react immediately and appropriately from a place that essentially is empty, right? That's the nature of the natural self. Call it Atman, call it an Atman, doesn't matter. It's essentially empty. There's no person there, you see. There's no person there. This is the crux of our existence. And so that's what the Gen-ren is. And the sooner we come back into alignment with that, the better. This is why in the modern world, the idea of authenticity and genuineness is completely warped, because it's from a perspective of the ego, not the true self. And so I really highly recommend that you go out and reading the Tao Te Ching, the Zhuangzi text, and even give Thomas Merton's The Way of Zhuangzi a chance and start to understand the true nature of your existence. And once you do, then you will become the great Taoist sage, the Gen-ren, and you will begin to act genuinely in a truthful manner that helps the world along and helps to inspire others to do the same. Shanti, shanti, shanti.